As soon as a little pressure is applied, public service retirees, poor people seeking health care, and working-class students find all of the weight placed on their slender frames. Joining me now is Dean Baker, economist and co-director at the Center for Economic Policy and Research. Dean, good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for having me on, Chris.
Dean, you wrote something great on your website about after the 60 Minutes piece about the sort of state budget shortfall, and you pointed out that they were missing a big piece of the story. What is the context that is not being discussed when we talk about state budget problems?
Well, the whole story here is the housing bubble that was fueled by Wall Street greed and Washington incompetence, people like Bernanke and Greenspan who weren't doing their jobs. And now we're faced with the worst downturn in 70 years, and that is why the state and local governments are facing shortfalls. So we have 60 Minutes running around going, oh, this person might get paid too much, and, you know, you could find this piece of waste and all that. The bottom line, though, is if we weren't in the worst downturn in 70 years, the state governments would basically be fine. This is all a contrived story. And, you know, basically 60 Minutes pulled off a hoax on its viewers.
Well, I think austerity is appealing, and although it's interesting, Chris Christie's approval ratings have been plummeting, but I think austerity is appealing to a certain segment of the population because it invokes prudence and virtue and self-restraint. What's wrong with austerity as the approach to the situation we find ourselves in?
Because it's totally at odds with what got us here and why we're in this situation. Again, we all could sympathize with the idea of working hard, not spending more than you earn. I mean, we all understand those values, and that makes sense. But that's not the problem the economy faces right now, and it's hard for people to understand it. The problem the economy faces right now is not enough demand, not enough spending, and it's kind of straightforward. When we had the housing bubble, that was creating a huge amount of demand, both in construction directly and indirectly, because we had $8 trillion of housing bubble wealth that people were spending against. They were taking out second mortgages, home equity loans. That demand has just disappeared. And we're in this bizarre situation where we're not suffering because we can't produce enough. We're suffering because we're not demanding enough. And austerity takes us exactly the wrong way. We're going to deal with a shortfall in demand by having less demand. It's the wrong solution to this problem.
So what would it look like? You had this thought experiment in the piece you wrote on the website, which I really liked, and you basically said, what would it look like if we treated state governments with the kind of care and deference that we treated Wall Street banks? If we saw, you know, California as so crucial as city, what's one thing the federal government could do to sort of get us through this rough patch?
Well, if you go back, what we did back in 08 when Citi and Goldman Sachs and most of the other major banks were on the edge of collapse, the federal government, we had the TARP, we had the special lending facilities from the Fed, we gave them literally trillions of dollars in loans at below market interest rates. And we played this game. We gave them money at way below market interest rates. They, of course, paid it back, and we go, oh, we made money on it. Let's do the same with California, New York, everyone's suffering from hardship. Let's give them trillions of dollars in loans at, let's say, 4 percentage points below the market interest rate. They then lend the money to other people. That's what Chase did. That's what Citi did. They'll make money on it. They could pay us back, and then we could have Timothy Geithner go out and, hey, we made a profit on it. That's the way it works in Washington, at least if you're Citigroup.
I'm terrible managing my bank account, but I think even I, with you know, cheap money and lending it at a higher interest rate, I think even I can make money doing that. So the New Jersey, there's another part of this story, particularly New Jersey, right? When you talk about the pension obligations down the road, which really do seem to be worrying. New Jersey governors failed to contribute the state's obligation to the pensions 13 out of the last 17 years, and now it seems like they want to turn around and screw over the people that they weren't paying for those 13 of 17 years.
This is really kind of incredible. You had people work. These are contractual obligations. People thought they worked in good faith. These are firefighters, school teachers. Those are most of the state employees. They worked in good faith, and now we have the governor saying, ha, 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 we don't have the money. You are dumb suckers. I mean, you know.
Right.
This is really outrageous, and, you know, as you were saying before, okay, if things are really that bad, and by the way, they have exaggerated the story, but if things are really that bad, well, if we're going to start cutting somewhere, I think the bonds that, you know, are held by Citigroup might be the first place to start, not the last place to go.